me just record. Okay, it's recording. I think it's recording. Okay, I hope it's recording. Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay. Right. So when you are speaking, I will mute because sometimes I might cough.
no worries.
No worries,
Coughing is part of the human condition.
Okay. Okay, so you ready?
Yes.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Hello, we meet again in the third episode of ICB podcast series run by the Institute of Chinese Buddhism, Singapore. This podcast series brings prominent Buddhist monastics, scholars, and practitioners to discuss issues in and around the Buddhist world, particularly within a multicultural context. Today, we will be discussing the topic of sharing the Dharma in a multicultural society. And with us today is Venerable Chuan Guan. Welcome to the show, Venerable.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me over.
Maybe I'll introduce a bit about Venerable Chuan Guan. He was ordained under Master Miao King or Master Miao Ching in 2002 and began his monastic training in Fa Yun Monastery in New Mexico, US, training under the Mahayana Buddhist tradition while studying the Theravadin Pali Canon. From 2006 to 2016, he trained and served as a resident monk in the Buddhist Library and Koming San Pokaksi in Singapore. He currently teaches in various Buddhist societies and conducts retreats while providing counseling and spiritual services. Venerable Chuan Guan is no stranger to technology. He received his degree in computer engineering from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore and worked in the tech industry prior to monkhood. You can actually find him via this blog, www.buddhavachana.net, on Facebook, Twitter, and his Dharma apps on Apple and Android mobile services. Thank you, Venerable, for joining us in this show.
Pleasure.
Now, let's get to the topic today. Venerable, in Buddhism, there are 3 universal truths, 4 noble truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path. These constitute the Dharma or the teachings of Buddhism. The Buddha spent his lifetime spreading the Dharma, as with his subsequent followers. Could you tell us why teaching and spreading the Dharma is an important part of Buddhism, and what does it entail?
That's a very interesting question. And in fact, today's topic, I think is very important for today's society, especially so in Singapore, but perhaps also applicable throughout the whole world. The world is much smaller as we get more connected, and with the new media, whatever happened in one corner is rapidly spread through videos, through podcasts like this one, all across the whole world, within matters of minutes, hours. No longer gone are the days where you hear about news that is actually old news. You know, now you hear it by the minute. Just one thing, it struck me the other day when I saw when I learned about this. The thing about 3 universal truths, I presume you are referring to the 3 universal characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta.
Oh yes, definitely,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
So that aside, yeah. So the question about why teaching and spreading the Dharma is an important part of Buddhism, and what does it entail? In a way, yes and no. Yes and no. And why? In a way, because we have to first look at why the Buddha shared the truth he discovered at the first place. It stems from a place of compassion. Yeah, because that is how, to begin with, he left his family life. He left the palace when he encountered the suffering in the city, when he left the palace to visit the people that he was going to take care of, to rule, so to speak, as a king to be. He saw aging, he saw sickness, and he saw death. So in a way, we can look at the Buddha's departure from the palace as his journey to look for an answer. Yeah, In fact, it's not just a way. That is the very premise, isn't it? And so his thereafter is a continuation of that journey. After he found the truth behind suffering itself, he shared with whoever he encountered and who are ready to listen. And so this is quite interesting part about Buddhism, where we share with those who are ready. We don't just it's not a carpet bombing process. Yeah. In fact, there's this other part which I say yes, but maybe no, which is that I had this very interesting conversation with this young chap one day, some years back, when I was still in the Buddhist library. And after we talked about some other matters, then it was the turn of the year, much like now. And then he asked me like, oh, what are your plans for the new year? So I thought, okay, I will share. You know, I was quite surprised. You know, he not that Christians cannot learn Buddhism. You know, we welcome anyone. I have students from Italy. The whole family are Italian Jew, and the grandfather actually want the grandson, my student, to learn Dharma and Chinese, to learn these two things. So I'm not I don't have the mindset. No, non-Buddhists cannot learn.
So these Italians, they are non-Buddhist. What faith tradition do they belong to?
They are Jewish.
Oh, Jewish. Okay.
Yeah. The late grandfather, he wore a skull cap. Yeah. Yeah. Very traditional. So half the family are Jews, half the family are Roman Catholics.
Interesting.
And after teaching them for some, like after teaching the grandson for some time, they invited me to Italy, Torino, to conduct a retreat for them. So I'm open. I see this as something that is open for everyone to learn. But I was still somewhat surprised. I wasn't thinking that he was going to want to attend my class. But anyway, okay, since you asked, so I shared. I say, okay, I have classes, I have meditation, Dharma classes, meditation classes, retreats, and so on. And then he's like, anything else? I'm like, no, that's all. And then you know what he told me? He said, how about conversion plan?
Yeah. Now that could be a bit sensitive, yeah?
Yes. But I mean, you know me. I'm often the person who rock the boat and stir the pot, right? So he asked me that, and I said I laughed. I said no, I don't have such a plan. Then he's like, no, conversion plan. And in fact, initially it was so left field. I was like, hold on, my conversion plan, and he said, you know, like spread the teaching and convert people to your religion. I said, no, we don't have that plan.
So just to be clear, Venerable, in
Yes.
Buddhism, there is really no such thing as proselytizing or sharing the Dharma in order to convert people to Buddhism.
So this is where it is something so different, so almost strange to many people. And in fact, I think this would come as a surprise for Buddhists as well. Because after all, there's all these teachings on compassion, and the Buddha did tell his disciples to go out, for the welfare and benefit of all. So why is this monk now saying that no, we don't have this conversion or proselytization agenda or plan, So I shared with this this young chap. I said, well, it's just not in our DNA, because way back in the Buddha's time, we see a different story from what we think. Remember what I mentioned earlier? The Buddha left the palace out of compassion to find a solution, and then he started teaching again out of compassion. Yeah, so it's not to have more disciples. But to help those, and then it's for those who are ready to hear. That means If you think you have the problem and you like to hear a solution, I can share with you, but it's up to you to take it. Yeah. So, but what evidence do I have, right? Now, there are a couple of suttas in the Buddha's time where the Buddha was having conversation with people. In fact, all the teachings are mostly, if not all, series of conversation. You know, random strangers, his disciples, and the Brahmins, the kings, the prince, the common folks. They would sometimes seek him out to ask him questions about life, about their problem, about what they have heard. And then the Buddha replied. So there was one such guy who came to see him. And after that, he was so convinced, just in one setting, he decided to become the Buddha's disciple. But he was a prominent public figure. So the Buddha refused him. The Buddha refused him 2 times. And only on the third time, the Buddha agreed. And the Buddha's reasoning was, you are basically you're a public person, you are a known person. It's not right for you to simply just change your teacher over one conversation, this is, but a third time, that person insisted. And only then the Buddha said, okay, but on one condition. And you know what condition? The Buddha said, you must continue to support your previous teacher. Yeah. So I draw much inspiration from the Buddha himself. And that's why it's just not inside our DNA to try to go and change people into our religion, And this is just one case. There are other cases where the Buddha said the same thing. But because of the efficacy of his teaching and his ability to teach, a lot of other schools started losing their disciples, even though he was not trying. And then at some point, some things, a reputation started to build up. He was then known as the monk with magic, who can attract other people's disciples and then change them into his disciple. And the best thing is, many of the Buddha's chief disciples were once from other schools. And some of them were sent to challenge the Buddha, to defeat him. And they were very confident. They were the high disciples in those schools. They were sent to defeat the Buddha, but became convinced that, hey, I think this guy, this ascetic is speaking the truth, Yeah. So much so that the Buddha, in some suttas, actually, it's very interesting. The Buddha is so candid. He just tells the person, like, look, I'm not teaching to make you my disciple. I'm teaching because it can help you. Yeah. So from this and the earlier suttas and many other suttas, we see that the Buddha was more concerned about one thing and one thing alone, whether he can help people to be free of suffering. And that's why there were many occasions where I shared that if there's one kind of conversion that we advocate, it is a conversion from unwholesomeness to wholesomeness, from greed, hatred, and delusion to non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion, from ignorance to wisdom, from suffering to no suffering. This is the only conversion we seek.
Yeah, I suppose that speaks about the universality of Buddhist teachings in a way that, when it comes to values like compassion, then it's everywhere and it transcends your personal identity even. And I suppose in Buddhism, it's more about the values and the practice rather than the specific doctrines that you hold as an identity marker of which category you belong to. Yeah.
Precisely. Now, having said that, I've been known in the Buddhist circle to be quite adamant about not mixing the labeling as well.
Yeah. Can you explain a bit more? What does it mean?
So, for example, there are some non-Buddhist religion or group that use Buddhist terms, Buddhist iconography, labels, and position themselves as Buddhism. Yeah, I would speak up against that when students ask. And some students are curious, like, but why are we so hung up about this? I say, no, it's just like if someone were to borrow physics terms but explain it wrongly, physics teacher have the duty. If the students ask, the physics teachers have the duty to clarify, to say, no, that's not a physics school. I heard about this particular tuition group, for example, and they're teaching physics totally in a twisted way. Yeah, if you want to be a physics student, then you may want to learn this. Yeah. Now, this is different from if, let's say, we attack or criticize another religion. Yeah, that would be like saying a maths teacher go and criticize arts, or arts teacher go and criticize maths. Yeah, so it's quite different.
Thank you, Venerable. I think that's very enlightening, the way you explain it. Of course, we live here in Singapore in a multi-religious society.
Yes.
And I hear you when you say that sharing the Dharma is part of Buddhist teaching, and it comes from compassion itself.
Yes.
And also a very important element, it's about sharing the truths, universal truths that is common to all humanity, such as the fact of suffering, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Oh, and that it comes from a place of compassion. So the intent is important, not to have more disciples.
Yeah. Again, in Singapore's context, we are one of the most religiously diverse society.
Oh, yes.
But also in the Singapore Constitution, in Article 15, actually, it gives the freedom to propagate one's religion. Again, the question is, what if you were to propagate to people who are not from your faith? Because propagation could also be sharing the Dharma to Buddhists who want to listen and understand the Dharma.
Right.
But it can also mean that you propagate to those who are willing to listen, as you said, but they don't belong to the faith tradition. They don't belong to the Buddhist tradition.
Right.
Now, however, this notion of freedom to propagate one's religion also must be seen in such a way that it does not cause conflicts. And this is where another legislation comes in, which is the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act,
Right.
that allows the government to issue restriction order if you cross a certain line and cause conflicts in your attempt to eagerly share your own faith. Yeah. So maybe you can advise listeners here. How do you think people of different faiths can actually share their respective beliefs with each other without offending the other person, and yet at the same time remain authentic, frank, and honest in their conversation? Because sometimes we do not want, just a superficial kind of engagement of dialogue where we don't really discuss the issues that really matter, right?
I mean, we know, right? in the interfaith circle for somewhat
That's right.
decade over or something. And many times, the first thing is we feel like we're always preaching to the converted, right? Those who
Exactly. But at the same time, there is this fine line, because sometimes when we broach on sensitive topics, someone will get offended.
if I may interject, and
Sure.
when I say preaching to the converted, so that those who are listening to the podcast or watching the video know the context. It is about those who embrace religious harmony already. They tend to attend religious harmony or interfaith programs. But if I can say so, there are probably those who maybe are still sitting on the fence or maybe not so pro-religious harmony. They are the ones who need to listen, but they usually don't want to take part.
And sometimes they might get offended because they don't understand the context, or the way it's being presented is something they are not familiar with. And people normally can get easily offended with things that they don't really understand or know. So how do we overcome this, Venerable? Is there any advice?
I'm not sure whether this can count as advice because I dare not say that I'm an authority in interfaith, itself. I think this is something that we are all still groping and learning as we go. This is a work in progress. But what I can say is that I can share what I observed over the years, what I've learned from the process, from others in the process. So the first thing is, again, coming from where we ended just now about the intent. If we share our belief, there's absolutely nothing wrong with sharing our belief. But if our intent is to first replace, second reduce, and third to remove other religion, then even if you give the person a packet of sweet or a sack of rice, then the person have to reconsider whether to accept those gifts. Yeah. So I think it's important to check our own intent. Yeah. Because if we want to have interfaith harmony and we want to talk about mutual respect, how can there be respect, honestly, if we are trying to reduce people, consciously trying to reduce other faith, replace them or remove them? Yeah, we cannot, on one hand, say, I respect you, but on the other hand, actually, I try to, the two are in contradiction. So I have, so there are two other points I want to highlight. I have to remind myself there are two other points. So the next point is, on this theme of reducing, the methods we employ also have to be suitable. So there's this thought experiment I often like to share with people, and it's about how, consider this, okay? I don't know whether you get offended. No, let's just do this so that, for the viewer's sake, okay, for the podcast audience sake, okay.
Maybe as a thought experiment, yeah.
As a thought experiment, are you married?
Yes, I am.
Now, what if maybe me or maybe somebody else start texting you or start calling you, or maybe it's your colleague, maybe it's your neighbor, and every time they meet you, will ask you like, hey, how's your marriage? Yeah. And you say, yeah, going fine. And then what if at some point the person start suggesting that, hey, there's this girl I know who is quite your type, Would you feel like the person has your best interest? But maybe you just had a quarrel, no? Even if you just had a quarrel, do you think it's correct if the person starts saying, hey, I know of this girl, quite nice one, no? You're still married, okay? You're not separated, not divorced, you're still married. Do you think it's correct for another person to start suggesting for you to, hey, no commitment? I mean, just like, it's okay, no harm done, right? Just meet up for a chat, for coffee, I'll be there,
Yeah.
So far, I haven't met anyone who will look me in the eye and say, yeah, it's okay. In fact, I said this to a pastor. He told me he was a Grab driver, and halfway through while sending me to NTU, he tried to convert me. In fact, we're still in conversation on WhatsApp.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I asked him this question, and he don't say that it's okay. Then I asked people, I say, why is it not okay? Why is it not okay for anyone to proposition you the possibility of finding another girl? If I may give an answer to my own question, it's simply because we respect the sanctity of marriages, right? Your choice. Now, if one day, not you, otherwise your missus will come after me. But one day, if a person, a couple decide that, okay, they have enough of it, let's part ways amicably. And after parting ways, and you are a friend, you are a stranger or whoever, sure, by all means, and still it's up to that person. But at that point in time, it's up to that person.
Right.
Anytime earlier than that, we would say that's distasteful. Like, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Like, you shouldn't even ask me, is that okay? Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you be asking that question in the first place? So then my question is, between choice of marriage partner and choice of religion, I don't say that marriage is trivial. I say that it's something that we need to respect the sanctity of it. But I think most would agree that religious choice should be higher, should rank higher, isn't it? In which case, then, why is it then okay to do it in the context of religion? If it's not okay for marriages, then it should be even more not okay to
mm,
try to change people's choice of religion.
mm,
And
s-
so,
mm, mm.
sorry, let me just wrap up this second
Sure,
point.
sure,
And
yes.
so, to me, um, if a person already have a religion, but he goes shopping, to put it bluntly, he come around and say, "Hey, Imran, I understand, I met you last week at the interfaith talk, or I heard your podcast is so interesting, and I would like to find out more about Buddhism, or I want to find out more about Muslim Islam." That's his choice. It's solicited. He asks you for information. That's perfectly fine to share. Um, if the person asks, then that's his choice, right? You know,
Mm,
uh, um, but not if the person didn't solicit for it. Firstly, and secondly, if the person already tell you that the person has a religion, and you still no, it's okay. I can just try. No. I think
mm,
that's the OB marker.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting you brought the point, but it's
Mm.
a very pertinent point actually.
Mm.
Uh, in our uh, eagerness to share about our own faith, we
Yes.
must be clear of our own intentions, and there
Mm.
should not be an element of wanting to convert the person, unless, of course, the person is seeking something,
Yes.
and it's not something that you solicit, but the person himself or herself is asking you to share a bit more deeper because the person is considering
Yeah. Or
some of the
just curious.
truths or just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the element of non-coercion is I think is the baseline.
Non-coercion is one thing. Actually, earlier I never mentioned anything about coercion. Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm not even talking about bedside conversion and the likes. Uh,
That's yeah.
that we shouldn't even have to discuss that. Like,
Mm.
seriously. So here I'm talking about non-coercion, but
Right.
it's that you don't need someone to coerce you into finding another girl for it to be wrong,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the third point I have about this thing of how to maintain interfaith harmony while sharing our respective beliefs. Um, I don't know whether you were present the first time I shared this, but you definitely heard me say this in interview talks before. Uh, and I usually have one slide um, that says Buddhists do not share in the belief of a creator God.
Mm.
Yeah. The first time I shared this was at Geylang Serai when Dr. Fatima Latif was the religious, was the advisor for the IRCC there. And it was quite funny because when I showed the slide, the whole hall at Geylang Serai CC was filled with, all the religious leaders and then the people from PA, from IRCC, from the community, from different language, race, and religion. And and then when I shared that, there was silence. And then I would usually tell them like, okay, let's soak in this, let's enjoy this moment of awkward silence. And they laugh.
Yeah, yeah, of course, because the tendency is normally for one to see another religion through the lens of their own
Yes,
theology, understanding. I mean, we are
yes,
talking about two separate frameworks, two separate
yes, very
religious
different.
system, very different.
Yes,
And it's important not to reduce. This is I like the term that you use, reduce another religion and subsume it under your own religious ideas.
yes,
I think
assimilate.
we assimilate. Yeah, I think we should appreciate every religion on its own terms, and
Yes,
that's where the dialogue can be authentic, where we try to understand it through the lens of the practitioners of that faith
yes,
themselves,
yes,
rather than to see it through our lens and try to reduce them, and worse still, to replace them with
yes,
our own faith.
yes.
Uh, Thank you, Venerable. This has been a very, very insightful conversation.
The last point itself, I would coin in as homogenization. Yeah, homogenization. And my aim in highlighting that, I have to chime this in, otherwise people may misinterpret. I would always highlight Just because we don't share in this faith, this belief, doesn't mean that we look at those with such belief as our enemy. And similarly, if you have such a belief, you don't have to look at those of us who don't as your enemy. We need to look at, as you say, look at the differences. Because interfaith work had always focused on the commonalities, which is important for a start. But we have to ask ourselves this question: when are we ready? Perhaps we are not, but we need to plan for it. It will not just happen by itself. We need to plan to be ready to talk about the differences. And until we embrace the differences between the religion, truthfully, wholeheartedly, nakedly, our friendship will only be superficial.
Those are wise words indeed, Venerable. Thank you so much for sharing and for giving very deep perspectives, I would say, on this topic of sharing the Dharma in a multicultural society. We have indeed learned much from the topic. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, do tune into IC Buddhism podcast for more of such conversations. Do follow us on Facebook and Instagram as we bring issues in and around the Buddhist world within a multicultural context. Thank you once again. Thank you once again to our listeners, and thank you, Venerable, for this conversation.
Thank you, Iwan. Pleasure to be here. See you again.
See you. Okay, I'll off the. Wow, this is really good. Wait, let me off. How do I stop recording? Yeah. Okay.
And if I may just add from my own side, the thing about the homogenization, right, is that it's just one liner. Is that the homogenization, ironically, leads to fundamentalism as one of the factors. I don't say all fundamentalism is due to homogenization. I think there have been other studies, but they look at homogenization in terms of pop culture, in terms of cultural invasion. Yeah, that this is what causes some communities to become entrenched and insular. Yeah. But so it is a great irony and a pity if interfaith effort end up actually creating the further worsening the problem they are trying to save. Yeah, because when we focus too much on the commonalities without highlighting the differences, it causes individuals to wonder, like if we're all this different, if we're all the same, then what? No, cannot be. We have to be different, and so they have to really drill in to find differences, and that's what fundamentalists do, isn't it?